My parents used my daughter's college fund because my sister's kid was not having a good day, so they took her to a luxury vacation. When I confronted my family, they said, "You hid that money from us. Consider this your punishment." My sister laughed, "Don't worry, just work more, we deserve this trip." I said, "Enjoy it while it lasts." When they got home, welcome home. To nothing. I never thought I'd be writing this story, but here we are. My name is Madison, and I'm a 34-year-old single mother to my beautiful 17-year-old daughter, Brittany. This is the story of how my own family betrayed me in the worst possible way, and how I made sure they learned that actions have consequences. Let me start from the beginning so you understand the full picture. I've been a single mom since Brittany was 2 years old. Her father, David, decided that fatherhood wasn't for him and disappeared, leaving me to raise our daughter alone. I won't lie, it was incredibly hard. I worked 2 jobs for years, sometimes 3 during the holidays, just to make ends meet. Every dollar I earned went toward rent, food, Brittany's clothes, school supplies, and whatever else she needed. But there was one thing I never compromised on: Brittany's future. From the moment she could walk, I started putting money aside for her college fund. It wasn't much at first, maybe $20 or $30 a month when I could spare it. Sometimes I'd skip lunch at work to save that extra $5. I'd buy generic brands, shop at thrift stores, and do anything I could to save even a few dollars for Brittany's education. My parents, Christopher and Susan, always seemed supportive of my struggles. They'd babysit Brittany when I had to work late shifts, and they'd often tell me how proud they were of me for being such a dedicated mother. My sister Stephanie, who's 3 years younger than me, also seemed understanding. She had her own daughter, Chloe, who was 3 years younger than Brittany, and we'd often talk about the challenges of motherhood. The difference between Stephanie and me was that she never had to struggle financially. She married her college boyfriend, Mark, right after graduation, and he landed a high-paying job in finance. They lived in a beautiful house in the suburbs, drove luxury cars, and took expensive vacations every year. Meanwhile, I was clipping coupons and shopping at discount stores. Over the years, I managed to save $47,000 for Brittany's college fund. It took me 15 years of sacrifice, but I was so proud of that number. I kept the money in a high-yield savings account that I had opened at my parents' bank. When I set up the account, I added my parents as authorized users so they could help with paperwork if needed. They were older and I trusted them completely. Brittany was an excellent student. She maintained a 4.2 GPA, was captain of the debate team, volunteered at the local animal shelter, and was already receiving interest from several universities. I was so proud of her, and I knew that the money I'd saved would help give her the best possible start in life. Everything changed 3 weeks ago. It was a Tuesday evening when I got the call from my mother. She sounded excited, which was unusual for a weekday evening call. "Madison, honey, I have some news," she said. "We've decided to take Stephanie and Chloe on a trip to Europe. We leave tomorrow morning." I was confused. "That's sudden, Mom. Is everything okay?" "Oh, everything's fine. It's just that poor little Chloe has been having such a hard time lately. You know how she gets when she's stressed about school and her social life. Stephanie thought a nice vacation would cheer her up." I should mention that Chloe was known in our family for being dramatic. She was 14 years old and had never been told no to anything in her life. When she didn't get her way, she'd throw tantrums that would make a toddler jealous. Stephanie and Mark always gave in to her demands, and my parents enabled this behavior by constantly spoiling her. "That sounds nice, Mom, but aren't European trips pretty expensive? How are you guys affording it?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Well, that's the thing, sweetheart. We used some of the money from Brittany's college account to help fund the trip. Stephanie needed help covering the costs, and we thought you wouldn't mind. We'll pay it back, of course." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "You what?" "Now, Madison, don't get upset. It's only for a few weeks, and like I said, we'll pay it back. Chloe really needed this trip, and you know how important family is." I was shaking. "Mom, how much money did you take?" Another pause. "All of it? But Madison, you have to understand." I hung up the phone. I immediately called the bank and confirmed my worst fears. The entire $47,000 had been withdrawn 2 days earlier. But here's the thing that made it even worse. I found out they had used their authorized access to get a $15,000 cash advance against my credit card as well. The total they had taken was $62,000. $62,000? 15 years of my life. Gone. I called Stephanie directly. "Oh, hey Madison," she answered cheerfully. "Mom told me she called you. Isn't this exciting? We're going to Paris, London, and Rome. Chloe is over the moon." "Stephanie, that money was for Brittany's college education. And you took money from my credit card too." "I know about the college fund, and that's really sweet of you, but Brittany's still in high school. She has plenty of time to figure out college. Chloe needed this trip now. She's been so depressed lately because Madison's parents took her to Europe last month, and Chloe felt left out. You know how sensitive she is. And the credit card thing was Mom's idea. She said you wouldn't mind since we're family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you decided to steal my daughter's future and put me in debt to make your daughter feel better about her friend's vacation? It's not stealing, Madison. It's family helping family. Besides, Mom and Dad said they'd pay it back. You're being really dramatic about this. Stephanie, I saved that money for 15 years. I worked multiple jobs, I went without food, Look, Madison, I know you think you're some kind of martyr because you're a single mom, but the rest of us have lives too. Chloe deserves nice things just as much as Brittany does. Maybe if you worked a little harder instead of always complaining about money, you could afford to take Brittany on trips too. I was speechless. This was my sister talking to me like I was some kind of burden on the family. Stephanie, you need to cancel this trip and return that money immediately. No. Her voice was firm. Chloe is already packed, and we're leaving in the morning. You can't just expect us to disappoint her now. Besides, Mom and Dad agreed to this. It's not like you're the only one who gets to make decisions about family money. It's not family money. It's my money that I saved for my daughter. Well, maybe you should have thought about that before you hid it from us. Consider this your punishment for being so secretive. She hung up on me. I tried calling my parents back, but they didn't answer. I called Stephanie again, but she blocked my number. I was completely alone, and my daughter's future had just been stolen by the people I trusted most. When Brittany came home from school that evening, I had to tell her what happened. She cried for 2 hours. Not just because of the money, but because she couldn't believe her own grandparents and aunt would do this to her. Mom, what are we going to do? She asked through her tears. I don't know, sweetheart, but I promise you, I will figure this out. For the next 3 weeks, while my family was living it up in Europe, I was a wreck. I barely slept, barely ate, and spent every free moment trying to figure out how to get that money back. I called lawyers, but they said it would be expensive to pursue legal action, and there was no guarantee I'd win since my parents had authorized access to the account. The worst part was the photos. Stephanie posted constantly on social media about their amazing European adventure. Pictures of them at the Eiffel Tower, eating at expensive restaurants, shopping at luxury boutiques, staying in 5-star hotels. All funded by my daughter's college dreams and my credit card debt. I commented on one of her posts, enjoying Brittany's college fund? She responded publicly, enjoying life. Maybe you should try it sometime instead of being so negative. The comments from her friends were even worse. They were praising her for taking such a well-deserved vacation and talking about how lucky Chloe was to have such generous family members. I wanted to scream. But instead of screaming, I started planning. You see, while my family was off gallivanting around Europe, I had time to think. And what I realized was that they had made several crucial mistakes. They had shown me exactly who they were, and they had given me 3 weeks to prepare for their return. I started by documenting everything. I screenshotted every social media post, saved every photo they tagged themselves in, and calculated exactly how much money they were spending. The total cost of their trip was approximately $62,000 for 3 weeks, exactly what they had stolen from me. I also started researching Stephanie and Mark's financial situation more carefully. My parents had been living in the same house for 30 years. It was a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in a nice neighborhood, and they were incredibly proud of it. What most people didn't know was that they had been struggling with finances since my father's heart attack 5 years earlier. The medical bills and reduced income had put them in a difficult position. They had been too proud to ask for help directly, but I had noticed they were struggling. So over the past few years, I had been quietly helping them. I would pay for their groceries sometimes, help with utility bills, and even paid for some of their medical expenses. I always did it discreetly because I knew they would be embarrassed. I calculated that over the past 5 years, I had given them approximately $28,000 in various forms of assistance. I had records of most of these payments, and I had witnesses who could confirm that I had been helping them financially. While they were in Europe, I prepared a detailed accounting of all the money I had given them over the years. I also prepared invoices for immediate repayment of my $62,000, plus interest and penalties for the unauthorized use of my credit card. I also researched the tax situation that Stephanie had mentioned to me before. My parents had been claiming some tax benefits related to Chloe's expenses, but I suspected this arrangement might not be entirely legitimate. I prepared documentation to send to the IRS requesting a review of their recent tax returns. Through some careful research and conversations with mutual friends, I discovered that Stephanie and Mark had been living beyond their means for years. Their house was mortgaged to the hilt, they had significant credit card debt, and Mark's job, while well-paying, was not as secure as they pretended. What I didn't know was that they were already 3 months behind on their mortgage payments and facing foreclosure proceedings. I did some digging and found out that Mark's company was actually in the process of downsizing. I had a friend who worked in HR at a competing firm, and she was able to confirm that Mark's position was likely to be eliminated in the coming months. This information wasn't public yet, but it was common knowledge in the industry. I contacted Mark's company anonymously and provided them with evidence of his recent expensive European vacation, paid for with stolen money. I pointed out that someone who could afford such luxuries probably didn't need to keep their job as much as someone who was struggling financially. I suggested they might want to reconsider their layoff priorities. I also contacted their mortgage company and inquired about the foreclosure timeline, since they were already in default. I discovered that the process had been delayed due to paperwork issues, but it was set to resume when they returned from their trip. Next, I looked into my parents' financial situation. They had been more responsible than Stephanie and Mark, but they had their own vulnerabilities. I also did some research into the European vacation itself. Through Stephanie's social media posts, I was able to track exactly where they went, where they stayed, and what they did. I documented everything and prepared a detailed report showing how my daughter's college fund and my credit had been used for luxury items and experiences. Most importantly, I consulted with a lawyer to make sure that everything I was planning was legal. I wanted to make sure that my actions were justified and that I wouldn't face any legal consequences for holding my family accountable. The day they returned from Europe, I was ready. I had taken the day off from work and was waiting when their plane landed. Brittany was with me. She had insisted on being there to see their faces when they realized what they had done. Stephanie posted a photo from the airport, home sweet home. What an amazing trip. #blessed, #family time, #Europe 2025. I commented, welcome home. We need to talk. They went straight to my parents' house, as I knew they would. They always gathered there after trips to share photos and stories. I waited an hour, then drove over. When I walked into my parents' living room, they were all sitting around the coffee table, looking at photos on Stephanie's phone and laughing about their adventures. "Madison," my mother said when she saw me. "Perfect timing. Come look at these photos from our trip. We had such a wonderful time." "I'm sure you did," I said calmly. $62,000 can buy a lot of wonderful times. The room went quiet. "Now, Madison," my father said, "let's not start this again. We told you we'd pay the money back." "When?" I asked. "Because I've been waiting 3 weeks for someone to contact me about repayment, and all I've seen are social media posts about luxury hotels and expensive dinners. Also, you put me $15,000 in debt by using my credit card without permission." Stephanie rolled her eyes. "Here we go again. Madison, we just got back. Give us time to get settled before you start demanding things." "I'm not demanding anything," I said. "I'm just here to let you know that while you were gone, I took care of a few things." I pulled out a folder of documents. "Mom, Dad, I've calculated all the financial help I've given you over the past 5 years. You owe me $28,000 for groceries, utilities, and medical bills I paid. Here's the detailed accounting. I'm also calling in the $62,000 you stole from Brittany and me, plus interest and credit card penalties. Payment is due in 30 days. My parents stared at me in shock. "Madison, what are you talking about? What financial help?" "The groceries I bought for you, the utility bills I paid, the medical expenses I've covered because I thought family was supposed to help family. The help I gave you instead of adding more to Brittany's college fund." I turned to Stephanie. "And Stephanie, I have some news about Mark's job. I made sure his company understood exactly how you funded your European vacation. They weren't too pleased to learn that an employee used stolen money for luxury travel while they were planning layoffs." Stephanie's face went white. "What are you talking about? You can't do that." "I can report theft and fraud, which is exactly what happened here. And Stephanie, you should know that your house is already in foreclosure. You're 3 months behind on your mortgage, and the bank is proceeding with repossession. I just made sure they expedited the process." Stephanie stood up so fast she knocked over her chair. "You can't do that. This is harassment. Actually, reporting crimes and calling in legitimate debts is completely legal. I have all the paperwork right here." I pulled out another set of documents. I also took the liberty of requesting an IRS review of some questionable tax arrangements. When you're already facing financial difficulties, additional tax penalties can be quite burdensome. Chloe, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, started crying. "What's happening? Are we in trouble?" "Don't worry, sweetie," I said to her. "This is just grown-up stuff. Your parents made some bad decisions, and now they have to face the consequences." Stephanie was screaming now. "You can't destroy our lives because you're mad about money." "I'm not destroying your lives," I said calmly. I'm just holding you accountable for your actions. You stole my daughter's future and put me in debt to fund your vacation. You told me to work harder while you spent money that wasn't yours. You said I was being punished for being secretive about money I had every right to keep private. Well, now you get to face the consequences of your choices. My mother was crying. Madison, please, we can work this out. We didn't know you were helping us financially. We never meant for this to happen. You meant for it to happen the moment you decided that Chloe's temporary disappointment was more important than Brittany's future. You meant for it to happen when you took money that wasn't yours without asking and put me in debt. You meant for it to happen when you told me it was my punishment for being secretive. I turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and one more thing. I've started a GoFundMe for Brittany's college fund. I've shared the story of how her own family stole her education money and put us in debt to fund a luxury vacation. It's already raised $12,000, and the story is gaining attention on social media. Several local news stations want to interview us about family financial abuse. The room erupted in chaos. Stephanie was screaming about how I was ruining their reputation, my parents were begging me to reconsider, and Chloe was crying about how her friends would find out. I walked to the door, then turned back one more time. You know, the funny thing is, if you had just asked me nicely, if you had explained that Chloe was having a hard time and you wanted to take her on a trip, I probably would have helped. I might not have been able to give you $47,000, but I would have tried to contribute something. Because that's what family does, they ask for help, they don't just take what they want. I looked directly at Stephanie. But instead, you decided to steal from a child and then mock her mother for being upset about it. You laughed at me for working hard to provide for my daughter. You told me I deserved to be punished for being responsible with money and not giving you access to everything I owned. I opened the door to leave. Enjoy the memories from your vacation. They're going to have to last you a long time, because you're going to be paying for that trip for years to come. I walked out, and Brittany followed me to the car. Mom, she said as we drove away, I can't believe you did all that. I can't believe I had to, I replied. The next few months were intense. Mark lost his job, just as I had predicted. Stephanie and Mark tried to hire a lawyer to fight the foreclosure, but they were already in default and had no legal grounds to challenge the bank's actions. The foreclosure process moved forward quickly since they were already months behind on payments. But the real drama started when Stephanie realized the full extent of what was happening to her perfect life. She called me at work, screaming and crying. Madison, you have to stop this. Mark lost his job, and now we're losing our house. How can you do this to your own family? Job, and now we're losing our house. How can you do this to your own family? The same way you could steal from your own niece and put me in debt, I replied calmly. Actions have consequences, Stephanie. This is insane. All of this over money. We would have paid it back. When? You've had 3 weeks to contact me about repayment, and instead you've been posting photos of your luxury shopping sprees. You spent $62,000 in 3 weeks, Stephanie. That's more than most people make in a year, and half of it wasn't even yours to spend. She was sobbing now. Please, Madison. I'm begging you. We'll lose everything. Brittany almost lost everything too. Her entire future was gone in one day because you decided your daughter's temporary disappointment was more important than my daughter's education. It's not the same thing. You're right. It's not the same thing. Brittany didn't do anything wrong. She didn't steal from anyone. She didn't mock anyone for working hard. She was just an innocent kid whose family betrayed her. Stephanie hung up on me, but she called back an hour later. I talked to a lawyer, she said. He says what you're doing might be illegal. He says I can sue you for harassment and intentional infliction of emotional distress. I laughed. By all means, please hire a lawyer to argue that I'm harassing you by reporting theft and calling in legitimate debts. I'm sure that will go well for you. Oh wait, you can't afford a lawyer because you spend all your money on vacation. The truth was, I had consulted with my own lawyer before taking any of these actions. Everything I had done was completely legal. Reporting suspected financial crimes is a civic duty, and calling in legitimate debts is perfectly within my rights. What Stephanie didn't understand was that I had spent 3 weeks planning this response while she was posting photos of herself drinking champagne in Paris. I had researched every legal avenue, consulted with professionals, and made sure that everything I did was above board. Meanwhile, the GoFundMe was gaining momentum. The story had struck a nerve with people, and donations were pouring in. But more than that, people were sharing their own stories of family financial betrayal. I was getting messages from all over the country from people who had experienced similar situations. One woman wrote, "My brother took my son's college fund to pay for his wedding. He said families should support each other, but he never paid it back. I wish I had done what you did." Another message said, "My parents borrowed money from my children's education accounts and lost it all gambling. They said the kids would understand. Thank you for showing that we don't have to just accept this kind of treatment. The support was overwhelming, but it also made me realize how common this type of family financial abuse really was. People were thanking me for standing up for myself and my daughter, for refusing to be a victim, for showing that there could be consequences for this kind of behavior. Local news stations started calling. They wanted to interview me about the story, about family financial betrayal, about the importance of protecting children's education funds. I agreed to a few interviews, and each one brought in more donations and more support. During one interview, the reporter asked me if I felt guilty about what I had done to my family. I feel guilty that it came to this, I said. I feel guilty that my daughter had to learn that her own grandparents and aunt would steal from her. I feel guilty that my family thought so little of us that they could take her future away for a vacation. But I don't feel guilty about fighting back. I don't feel guilty about protecting my daughter. And I don't feel guilty about holding people accountable for their actions. The interview went viral. People were sharing it on social media, commenting about their own experiences, and praising me for standing up for my daughter. The hashtag Britney's College Fund started trending locally. But the attention also brought some criticism. Some people said I had gone too far, that family should forgive family, that I was being vindictive. Stephanie's friends started commenting on the news stories, claiming that I was exaggerating the situation and that Stephanie was a victim of my psychotic behavior. One of Stephanie's friends, a woman named Amanda, even started her own social media campaign defending Stephanie. She posted long rants about how I was destroying an innocent family over money, how I was using my daughter's situation to get attention, how I was a bitter single mother who was jealous of Stephanie's success. Amanda's posts actually backfired. People who read them were even more outraged at the attitude that stealing from a child's education fund was no big deal. The comments on Amanda's posts were overwhelmingly supportive of me and Britney. One person wrote, "If taking someone's child's college fund for a vacation is no big deal, then losing your house over it should also be no big deal." Another comment said, "The fact that you think this woman is wrong for protecting her daughter's future tells me everything I need to know about you and your friend Stephanie." The IRS review resulted in some penalties and back taxes, though not as severe as I had hoped. My parents had to use most of their savings to pay their debts to me and to cover the tax issues. They ended up selling their house and moving into a smaller apartment. Stephanie and Mark lost their house through foreclosure and had to move in with Mark's parents. Mark eventually found another job, but at a much lower salary. Stephanie had to get a job for the first time in years, working as a receptionist at a dental office. But the consequences went beyond just financial. The social media attention meant that everyone in their social circle now knew what they had done. Stephanie's friends started distancing themselves from her. Chloe's school friends' parents heard about the situation and began questioning whether they wanted their children around a family that would steal from a child's education fund. Mark's new job was at a much smaller company, and his new colleagues had seen the news stories. He was embarrassed and ashamed, and he started to realize how his passive participation in Stephanie's decision had contributed to the destruction of their lives. Chloe, who had been spoiled and entitled for her entire life, suddenly found herself living in her paternal grandparents' basement, sharing a room with her mother. Her private school friends couldn't relate to her new circumstances, and she started to understand the real cost of that European vacation. One evening, about 6 months after they had lost their house, Chloe called me. "Aunt Madison?" she said quietly. "I wanted to apologize for what happened. I know it's my fault that everyone thought I needed that trip. I know Britney's college money got taken because of me." I was surprised by her call. "Chloe, you were 14 years old. This wasn't your fault. The adults in your life made bad decisions, and you're not responsible for that." But I was so bratty about wanting to go to Europe like Madison did. I complained and cried until Mom said she'd figure out a way to take me. If I hadn't been so selfish, none of this would have happened. "Chloe, wanting things is normal for teenagers. But stealing from your cousin to get those things is not normal. That was a choice your mother made, not something you forced her to do." She was quiet for a moment. "I miss our old house. I miss my old school. I miss having my own room. But mostly, I feel bad about Britney. She was always nice to me, and now she probably hates me." "Britney doesn't hate you, Chloe. She understands that you weren't the one who made the decision to take her money. She's hurt by what happened, but she doesn't blame you for it. Can I talk to her? Can I apologize to her?" I arranged for Chloe and Britney to meet for coffee. It was an emotional conversation, but it was good for both of them. Chloe apologized sincerely, and Britney was gracious and forgiving. They both understood that they were victims of the adults' bad decisions, and they were able to maintain their relationship despite everything that had happened. That conversation was actually a turning point for Chloe. She started to mature and take responsibility for her own actions. She got a part-time job to help with expenses, and she started to appreciate things that she had previously taken for granted. The experience taught her lessons about entitlement and consequences that she probably wouldn't have learned otherwise. The GoFundMe for Brittany's college fund raised over $58,000. The story was picked up by several major news outlets, and we received donations from people all over the country who were outraged by what my family had done. Brittany ended up with more money for college than she'd had before the theft. Several colleges that had been recruiting Brittany offered her full scholarships after hearing her story. She ultimately chose to attend her dream school, a prestigious university that offered her a complete ride plus a stipend for living expenses. The best part? The scholarship meant she didn't even need to use the GoFundMe money for college. We were able to use it to start a scholarship fund for other students whose families had failed them financially. My parents eventually reached out to try to reconcile. They claimed they had been manipulated by Stephanie and that they never meant to hurt Brittany or me. They said they wanted to make things right. I agreed to meet with them for coffee. They looked older, tired, and genuinely remorseful. "Madison," my mother said, "we know we made a terrible mistake. We let Stephanie convince us that it would be okay to borrow the money, and we never thought about how it would affect Brittany. We're so sorry. We want to make it right," my father added. "We don't have much left, but we want to contribute to Brittany's education to replace some of what we took." I looked at them for a long moment. "Do you understand what you did? You didn't just take money. You broke my trust. You showed me that you valued Stephanie's wants over Brittany's needs. You showed me that you thought so little of my sacrifice that you could just give it away to make someone else happy." They both nodded, tears in their eyes. "I spent 15 years saving that money. 15 years of going without, of working extra jobs, of choosing between my needs and my daughter's future. And you gave it away for a vacation." "We know," my mother whispered. "We know, and we're so sorry." I thought about it for a moment. "I'll consider forgiving you, but only if you do something for me." "Anything," my father said. "I want you to write a letter to Brittany. I want you to explain exactly what you did and why it was wrong. I want you to apologize for betraying her trust and for stealing her future. I want you to take full responsibility for your actions without blaming Stephanie or anyone else. And I want you to promise her that you will never do anything like this again." They agreed, and they wrote the letter. It was a genuine, heartfelt apology that acknowledged the full extent of their betrayal. Brittany read it and decided that she was willing to have a relationship with her grandparents again, but it would take time to rebuild trust. Stephanie, on the other hand, never apologized. She continued to blame me for ruining her life and claimed that I had overreacted to a simple misunderstanding. She told anyone who would listen that I was vindictive and cruel for destroying her family over money. She and Mark eventually divorced. The financial stress, combined with the public humiliation and the loss of their lifestyle, proved too much for their marriage. Mark got primary custody of Chloe, which was probably the best thing for her. Away from Stephanie's influence, Chloe started to mature and take responsibility for her actions. Mark reached out to me about 2 years later. He had gotten back on his feet financially and had started a new relationship with a much more down-to-earth woman. He wanted to apologize for his role in what had happened and to make amends. "Madison, I know I can't undo what we did," he said, "but I want you to know that I've learned from this experience. I allowed Stephanie to make decisions that I knew were wrong, and I participated in something that hurt you and Brittany. I'm sorry." He had brought a check for $8,000, not nearly enough to cover what they had stolen, but it was a significant amount for him at the time. I appreciated the gesture, but more importantly, I appreciated that he had taken responsibility for his actions. Brittany, now in her second year of college, has an excellent relationship with her grandparents again. She's doing amazingly well in school and has already been accepted to a prestigious graduate program. She's planning to become a lawyer, specializing in financial crimes and family law. "I want to help other people who have been taken advantage of by their families," she told me. "I want to make sure that what happened to us doesn't happen to other people." I'm proud of her for taking such a positive approach to what was a traumatic experience. As for me, I learned several important lessons from this experience. First, I learned that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who will hurt you the most. Second, I learned that it's important to protect yourself and your children, even from family members. Third, I learned that sometimes the only way to get justice is to take it yourself. But most importantly, I learned that I'm stronger than I ever thought I was. I survived being a single mother, I survived financial struggles, and I survived the betrayal of my own family. Brittany and I came out of this experience closer than ever, and we both learned that we can overcome anything as long as we have each other. The whole experience also taught me about the importance of setting boundaries and holding people accountable for their actions. For too long, I had been the family member who always gave in, who always sacrificed, who always put everyone else's needs before my own. I thought that was what love looked like, but I learned that real love includes respect and consideration. Stephanie never did learn that lesson. Last I heard, she was working 2 jobs to make ends meet and still blaming everyone else for her problems. She had moved in with a new boyfriend, but according to mutual friends, she was still the same entitled, manipulative person she had always been. Sometimes people ask me if I felt bad about what I did to my family. The answer is no. I don't feel bad about holding people accountable for their actions. I don't feel bad about protecting my daughter's future. I don't feel bad about refusing to be a victim. What I do feel bad about is that it had to come to that point. I feel bad that my family thought so little of me and my daughter that they could steal from us without consequence. I feel bad that they taught Chloe that it was okay to take from others to get what you want. I feel bad that they broke apart our family over their own greed and entitlement. But I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret standing up for myself and my daughter. I don't regret showing them that actions have consequences. Brittany is now 20 and thriving in college. She's confident, successful, and knows her worth. She's learned that she doesn't have to accept being treated poorly, even by family members. She's learned that she has the power to protect herself and to fight for what's right. Those are lessons that are worth more than any college fund. And as for the title of this story, when they got home from their luxury vacation, they truly did come home to nothing. They lost their house, their jobs, their financial security, and their family relationships. All because they thought they could steal from a child and get away with it. They learned that some people will fight back, and when they do, the consequences can be life-changing. I hope anyone reading this story understands that you don't have to be a victim. You don't have to accept being treated poorly by anyone, including family members. You have the power to protect yourself and your children, and sometimes that means taking action that others might consider extreme. But sometimes extreme situations call for extreme measures. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply holding people accountable for their choices and letting them live with the consequences. Brittany and I are doing better than ever. We have a strong relationship, a bright future, and the knowledge that we can overcome anything together. That's worth more than any amount of money, and it's something that no one can ever take away from us. As for my family, they learned an expensive lesson about the importance of respect, honesty, and accountability. Whether they choose to learn from that lesson or not is up to them, but they'll never have the opportunity to hurt us again. Because we're not the same people we were before. We're stronger, wiser, and more prepared to protect ourselves and each other. And that's the real victory in this story.